I'm Stephen Hodder of Hodder and Partners Architects, and I'm going to be your moderator again for this session, which is entitled Delivering Healthy Cities, Vision and Best Practice. When I was at the RIBA, we launched a report entitled City Health Check, How Design Can Save Lives and Money. And it uncovered two clear lessons. Firstly, that there's a clear link between land use and public health in cities. And secondly, that people say it is the quality, not the quantity of streets and parks that will encourage them to walk more. Greater Manchester continues on a transformative journey of growth founded on genuine opportunities for investment. The Greater Manchester Spatial Framework, underpinned by TFGM's 2040 vision, is to make sure that investment and growth in houses and jobs happens that also benefits our current residents and makes Greater Manchester a better place to live and work. We need a plan for schools, green spaces, roads and health facilities alongside new homes, offices and factories, all of which places great importance on the structure and order of our city region in terms of its landscape. What density should we cluster different uses? How do we present local character and distinctiveness? How will we experience these redeveloped places? What sort of lifestyle will our city offer? There are important green spaces, parks, rivers, streets and canals in the heart of our region and in all of its settlements. But we need to showcase and enhance an offer which is a coherent landscape that is safe and attractive for people to choose active travel, reducing pollution, improving physical health and creating positive environments for people to meet and engage with one another. Our speakers for this session are Eamon Boylan, Chief Executive of Stockport Metropolitan Borough Council and soon to be Chief Executive of the Combined Authority. And Eamon will kick off the session shortly with a piece about the exciting movement to reinvigorate Greater Manchester's landscape. I'd like to welcome Frédéric Secure, who is the Director of Trees and Landscape for the Greater Lyon Authority. Frédéric will offer an insight into best practice from Lyon. And finally, Stephen O'Malley, Founding Director of Civic Engineers, who will offer a vision as to how some of these ideas might be applied to the streets of Manchester. And then, as is usually the case, we'll invite then questions from the floor in a discussion piece. And we have a hashtag on, so if you're tweeting, use the hashtag healthy cities, and we'll welcome any comments or observations that you may have. So, first of all, Eamon, would you like to kick off, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen, and welcome everyone to the Manchester Pavilion. The title of the session is about healthy cities, and I'd like to say a little bit about health and Greater Manchester before I move on to talk about some of the initiatives being taken, in particular the movement which would be called City of Trees. I love simple things that say what they do on the top of the tin. It's a City of Trees. It couldn't be simpler than that. It's a great initiative, and I'll come to it in a moment. But just in terms of health and well-being, for my mind, probably the most important part of Greater Manchester's devolutionary journey has been our ability, with the agreement of government, to take greater control over decision-making around how we manage health and social care. Because if you map deprivation anywhere in Greater Manchester, you can use any measure that you want, and you wind up in the same places with the same communities, the same streets and the same people. And one of the most glaring indications of inequality in my mind is the gross disparity in life expectancy that exists between our most wealthy neighbourhoods and our poor neighbourhoods. And the fact that in my own borough, in the wealthiest neighbourhood, as a man, you're likely to live for 13 years longer than someone born on the same day as you, 3 miles up the road in a more deprived area. And that person in that deprived area, on average, is going to have up to 17 years more poor health before they die. End result is the conclusion that we are not getting it right in terms of a health and social care system. And the approach that we're taking is quite radical, to move money out of acute settings and to work very, very hard on prevention, on promoting health and well-being. And that's why I come to the City of Trees, because the public realm, the public environment, not only individual parks, but the totality of that environment is going to have a significant effect on our health and well-being and healthy outcomes for many of our people. So City of Trees is set out to achieve the very bold ambition of planting a tree for every man, woman and child who lives there within a generation. At the moment, there's 2.7 million of us. I think by the time we've planted every tree, then we probably need to plant nearer 3 million to get there. But that's exactly the ambition that's been set. And so that's 3 million trees, 2,000 hectares of unmanaged woodland brought into productive state, which I think is a very bold ambition, but an ambition backed by a very, very impressive number of public and private agencies. And I think it's really significant to see the extent of private sector involvement in the delivery of City of Trees. And you can see some of these here. I have to pay tribute to the Oglesby Foundation, who effectively created the platform upon which the movement has been built. Why trees? They do deliver a whole range of benefits, not only in terms of human short-term health, but also in respect of environmental sustainability and in terms of resilience. The importance of trees as important mitigators of flood is a really, really important issue. And as speaking from a borough that was flooded in June last year, there's nothing fair about being flooded in June, I can tell you. We want to do as much as we can to improve our resilience in a sustainable way. And trees can do an awful lot of things. They can, of course, improve image, they can improve air quality, they can do all sorts of things, but they can also have some very direct economic benefits. I'm not quite sure where the factoid in the bubble came from. I'm not sure that I would be willing to pay 12% more for a good if I was buying it under a tree canopy than otherwise, but that's an interesting piece of research, so we'll go with it. But there are some tangible evidence that actually better public realm, better environment with trees actually does have positive impacts both in terms of rental yields and house prices. And also I touched on climate change. The greening up of streets can achieve up to a 30% reduction in pollution through particulates being trapped in leaves and other vegetation. And as we are looking at the need for some fairly draconian interventions in order to deal with the very, very significant air quality problems that we face, this is a real, real boon and a real priority for us in moving forward. So what next? Some of the flagship projects here are very important. The City Forest Park in Salford. We are working on a research programme to understand how we can better improve our resilience and utilise the green infrastructure to best effect. There's a big project going ahead to identify plots for planting in Manchester and Salford in the city centre, which can help to transform and upgrade and certainly would complement some of the fantastic public realm propositions that we've heard about this week that are coming forward through some of our major developments. And above all, one of the most important things here is it's creating a real platform for effective engagement with schools and making sure that environmental awareness and health and well-being issues are at the forefront of our thinking in talking to our young people and helping prepare them for life. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a flavour of where we are. I think we'll now see that we have got a long way to go to catch up with cities like Lyon, who've been doing this for a very long time. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Hopefully for you, I will be translate. Donc, je commence. Je voudrais d'abord remercier Manchester pour l'invitation à cette conférence.
I would like to thank Manchester for the invitation to this conference.
C'est très intéressant de pouvoir avoir ces échanges pour apprendre les uns des autres.
It's really interesting to have such exchanges that enable us to learn from each other.
Moi, j'ai commencé il y a 30 ans à travailler en Angleterre où j'ai appris les concepts de foresterie urbaine que j'ai pu développer ensuite à Lyon.
The concepts I'm now developing in Lyon, I actually learned them 30 years ago in England.
Donc Lyon, c'est la deuxième agglomération française.
Lyon is the second city in France.
Et la métropole a des compétences très variées qu'elle exerce directement.
So the metropolis has various competences that it directly implements.
C'est l'urbanisme, les transports, la voirie, l'eau, la propreté.
Planning, water, waste,
développement économique.
Economy.
En matière de nature, la métropole s'occupe directement des arbres qui sont situés sur les espaces publics.
The metropolis takes care of the trees that are physically on the territory of the metropolis,
Et dans 2 grands parcs dont elle a la responsabilité.
and 2 big parks that are under its responsibility.
Elle agit aussi sur les arbres qui sont sur l'ensemble de son territoire,
It also acts on the totality of the trees on the territory,
avec les règlements d'urbanisme qui permettent de protéger ces arbres.
with specific regulations that enable the protection of these trees.
Et on estime qu'il y a sur l'agglomération entre 2 et 3 millions d'arbres, ce qui correspond à peu près, pour faire la comparaison, à 2 arbres par habitant.
It is estimated that there are 2 to 3 million trees on the territory, meaning 2 to 3 trees per inhabitant.
En ce qui concerne les arbres sur les espaces publics, pour nous, c'est un héritage très fort du 19e siècle.
These trees on the public space are a direct heritage from the 19th century.
On l'a souvent oublié, mais les principales motivations qui ont conduit au 19e siècle à planter de manière systématique les villes en France, c'était la santé, l'amélioration de la qualité de l'air, le rafraîchissement de la ville et l'amélioration de l'image et de l'attractivité du territoire.
So why were these trees planted in the 19th century? Actually, it met the need to increase the quality of life, freshness,
Qualité de l'air
air quality,
et l'attractivité.
and attractiveness of the city too.
Et c'est exactement les enjeux que l'on a aujourd'hui à résoudre pour le développement d'une ville durable.
These are the stakes we are faced with if we want a sustainable city.
Mais cet héritage a été malmené au XXe siècle.
This heritage was put to the test in the 20th century.
Et beaucoup de ces arbres ont été abattus, notamment dans des projets pour permettre le développement de la place de la voiture dans les villes.
Many of these trees were destroyed to let the car in.
Et ce qui est intéressant de voir sur ces 2 photos, c'est que ce qui a disparu et qu'on essaye de remettre aujourd'hui, c'est les arbres et les tramways.
Les arbres et les?
Tramways.
Okay. What they're trying to put back are trees and tramways.
Et en fait, à la fin des années 70, c'est la population elle-même qui a commencé à critiquer les politiques par rapport à l'oubli de la qualité du cadre de vie.
At the end of the 1970s, the population itself began to claim for a cleaner and a cleaner city with a higher quality of life.
Mais il a fallu attendre le début des années 90 pour que cette demande sociale se transforme en politique publique.
But they had to wait for 20 years before it evolved in a political action.
Et cette politique, elle a été écrite avec des chartes. Des chartes, c'est des engagements qui permettent de rassembler des acteurs autour d'objectifs communs.
So there were compromises that were made and written into white papers, charters.
Par exemple, on a une charte de l'arbre qui regroupe 100 acteurs de l'agglomération qui sont à la fois des communes, des entreprises privées, des associations.
So there is, for instance, a charter of the tree that was signed by 100 players, such as civil society organizations, the public sector, the private sector.
Alors, à côté de ça, je vais revenir un petit peu en arrière. Donc, cette politique, elle a permis de doubler le nombre d'arbres dans l'agglomération sur les espaces publics en 20 ans.
In 20 years, this policy made it possible to double the number of trees in the conurbation.
Et actuellement, on développe un plan de canopée pour l'adaptation de la ville au changement climatique qui devrait augmenter encore le rythme de plantation dans les prochaines années.
This pace of planting should even increase in the future.
Alors, depuis quelques années, on travaille sur la question de l'eau dans la ville de la gestion de l'eau pluviale.
We also have been working on water and rainwater.
Et là aussi, quand on regarde historiquement, on s'aperçoit que l'eau a longtemps été considérée comme un risque.
Water has for a long time been considered as a risk, or was considered a risk.
Un risque pour les maladies, un risque pour les inondations.
As far as illnesses, floodings are concerned.
Et donc, pour oublier ce risque, on a développé des systèmes pour enfouir l'eau dans des tuyaux qui permettaient de l'évacuer hors de la ville.
So to avoid that risk, there were pipes that were built to draw that water out of the city.
Mais on a créé un système un peu schizophrène, puisque d'un côté, on payait pour évacuer de l'autre, et de l'autre, on créait des espaces verts qui avaient besoin d'eau.
So it was a kind of schizophrenic system, whereas you paid to evacuate water, but at the same time you created green spaces which needed water.
Et donc aujourd'hui, on s'est aperçu qu'il y avait un véritable triangle vertueux à rassembler la question de la nature en ville, la question de la gestion de l'eau pluviale et la question de l'adaptation de la ville au changement climatique.
We realized there is not a virtuous circle, but virtuous triangle between facing the climate change, the issue of water, and that of the quality of life through green spaces.
Et aujourd'hui, dans tous nos projets, on essaye d'utiliser le végétal pour la gestion de l'eau, pour répondre à cette demande sociale, mais aussi pour permettre de rafraîchir la ville.
Water and green projects are intrinsically linked. Dans quel but?
Pour rafraîchir la ville et répondre à la demande sociale.
To freshen the city and meet the social demand.
Mais c'est systématique sur tous les projets d'aménagement d'espaces publics et de voirie.
Okay, but this is done in a systematic way in all the projects of road changes or whatever in the city.
Et voilà par exemple un projet qui est en cours d'achèvement.
This is an ongoing project, almost finished.
C'est une rue plantée au 19e siècle qui avait été complètement déboisée.
This street had been planted in the 19th century. Trees had been destroyed in the 20th.
Et tout le projet consiste à récupérer la place laissée à la voiture pour la redonner aux piétons, aux cyclistes et à la nature.
So the place that was devoted to cars is now devoted to cyclers, pedestrians, and nature.
Et ces grands projets nous servent également de sites d'expérimentation de nouveaux procédés.
These are also experimental sites for new processes.
Ici, par exemple, on avait d'anciens souterrains qui ont été transformés en bassins pour stocker l'eau pluviale.
So we used these undergrounds and they are now used as basins for rainwater.
Et cette eau va être utilisée pour irriguer les plantations, pas pour permettre aux plantes de survivre, mais pour faire en sorte que les plantes évapotranspirent, c'est-à-dire qu'elles envoient de l'eau dans l'atmosphère pour rafraîchir le climat.
And this water in these basins is used for the plants, not to irrigate them, but so that they can sweat, so to speak, this water and give it back to the space.
Donc on travaille avec des scientifiques qui vont nous permettre de mesurer et d'automatiser ces systèmes.
We are working with scientists who help us automate these systems.
Parce qu'à Lyon, la principale vulnérabilité du territoire par rapport au changement climatique, c'est les risques liés aux canicules estivales.
Lyon is particularly vulnerable in terms of climate change in relation to very high temperatures in the summer.
Et ça a des conséquences sanitaires importantes avec des fortes mortalités.
This has important health consequences in terms of death.
Voilà. Donc voilà une des photos de la réalisation.
It's one of the photos of what has been achieved.
Et puis voilà, je vous remercie de votre attention.
Thank you for your attention.
Good afternoon. I'm delighted to be sharing the stage this afternoon with Leon as collaborators, but also we are competitors with Leon for the messages that have been coming forward throughout the week in terms of competing for international talent, international skills and international jobs. And we need to offer the lifestyles to appeal to those people to come and live in our city, to live in Manchester. And I am reminded of a story that Siemens shared with us, who are based in Manchester. They talked about being able to offer those international jobs of the highest quality, as the Siemens facility in Manchester is a global centre of excellence for offshore electricity generation. And the corresponding part that the city needs to provide is the wider lifestyle, the access to culture, the access to leisure, the access to retail, and then all of the bits in between. How do we move from one to the other? And I think we've seen this week how the densification of the city is almost inevitable at this stage, and we need to think about a more sophisticated landscape, picking up on the lessons and the ideas that have been presented from Leon. Let me illustrate the point with an analogy. Here we have a heavily engineered watercourse that provides this engineering role, this engineering function in the short amount of its actual 12 months of the year life cycle, to the complete detriment of the landscape that it passes through. And what we need to think about in terms of our highways is actually the same functionality in terms of flood alleviation as this watercourse here shows, but actually in the 11 months of the year when it's not in flood, it offers up all of this other value in terms of biodiversity, in terms of pleasure and joy and access, and places where we want to spend our time. Our streets have a huge amount of demands that are placed upon them. I think Eamon started off the session talking about pollution and the impact that the increasingly awareness that we have in relation to pollution in our cities, and also the need to diversify the ages of our cities to make them more attractive to families and also the elderly, so we cater for more vulnerable pedestrians and more vulnerable users within the city itself. There's also the sensory experience of the city, the sights and smells, how we experience the city, how we pass through and move through the streets of the city. What does that look like? How does it feel? There's then the sights of the city. 75% of our perceptions of the city and engagement is through our sight. We want to make beautiful places that are wholly engaging and encourage us to spend time in their open spaces. And we've already touched on the idea of biodiversity and the need to provide more opportunity for habitat in our city centres. There's an understandable tension and arm wrestle over the reprovision of land in terms of development within the city and its outskirts. Why not bring some of that green infrastructure into the city, and rather than just seeing development leak out into areas that are currently green? There's a real opportunity to make that happen and to add a huge amount of value to the city centres. The point about resilience and water has also been made, and I think there's a number of very simple techniques that we can employ. There's a very sophisticated range that Leon have employed that are very successful. The transevaporation methods where they trap and capture rainwater and then allow it irrigate back into the trees and cool down the places locally. I think in places like Manchester, there's other roles that the attenuation of water and the management of water and the opportunity for habitat and water resilience can be provided. There's also the experience, the stimulation, the pleasure metric. What is it about our favourite streets, your favourite streets? What is it about them that appeals to you? Why do you want to spend time in them? And there's this idea that every 4 seconds the brain seeks to have a stimulation of some description or another. And the idea that a rhythm of a street, a door, a window, an opportunity to engage starts to generate this attractiveness and this type of appeal. There's also the issue of climate in Manchester. And here we have the hardy Copenhageners cycling in all seasonal weather, from the very downright harsh wintry conditions of the snow through to the very casual summer conditions with the wicker basket on the front of the bike. And interestingly, in Manchester, when you compare the climate data, there's only a day or two a month in it in terms of inclement weather and rain and all of those things that I think the perception in Mancunians' minds and others may be that it's actually harsher. Why can't we be a centre of a city of cycling excellence and cycling infrastructure? And just to offer up some empirical data to support some of these arguments, here we have Poynton on the outskirts of Stockport. And you can see this is a pretty ordinary junction before the work that took place. There was a local cost to the local economy in terms of safety of about £700,000 a year, congestion of about £400,000 a year, and relatively low levels of walking and cycling. These metrics have been developed using the work that TfL have been exploring in relation to healthy cities, the work of Lucy Saunders and Brian Deegan. And using those metrics and applying them to the completed scheme, we can see that there's significant savings to be had, which total up here to something in the order of about £750,000 to £800,000 a year when you look at the positive impact that these changes have on their local economies. In Altrincham, you can see that this is an image taken of the Market Hall, probably dates to about 2011. Altrincham suffered very badly in the 2000s, and also the arrival of the recession was one of the worst or lowest performing town centres across the country, with very, very high vacancy rates. Here you can see it at 24%, and footfall at December 2015 there at just under 700,000. Using some of the techniques that I've just mentioned and employing them across the centre of Altrincham, there's been a massive drop in the vacancy rate, huge increase in the amount of footfall year on year, 30% increase. And that also comes with 24 new businesses, 90 new jobs, and a significant amount of private sector investment. So it's clear that there's a direct relationship between the public realm, the quality of the public realm, the quality of the townscape, and the economic vitality that it can offer. In terms of a proposition for how we might employ these techniques to a key armature within the city centre, and something that is highly propositional in the sense that it hasn't been consulted on or is just a suggestion, an idea, a concept, and looking at the wider conurbation, we've explored the possibility of what a reimagined Great Ancoats Street might be. And here you can see, for those that don't know Great Ancoats Street, it currently provides a very important role within the movement network across the city. However, TfGM's own statistics show that there's about 30% of traffic travelling less than 5 kilometres distance in peak time hours. And I think if we started to chip away at those numbers and get them down by that quantity, by about a third, we're into the same sort of realms as the numbers that we deal with at the junction in Poynton, which is quite high at about 26,000 vehicles. And the opportunities in terms of development to the neighbourhoods to the north and east of Great Ancoats Street and the connections back into the city struggle with how they cross Great Ancoats Street and properly engage with the city. This streetscape picks up on many of the themes that we've just ranged over. It's looking at properly embedded cycling infrastructure. It looks at highly regular transverse connections for pedestrians at regular intervals down along the length of the street, and water-sensitive urban design in the form of vegetation, rain gardens, swales and trees to offer a much more coherent and integrated vision for what our streetscapes might be. So that's the note I was going to leave you on, Stephen.
Thank you for that thought-provoking comment at the end there. It's down to me now, is it? If you'd like to join me for a sort of discussion on what we've seen, and I guess at this point as well, I should thank Valerie for amazing translation. Thank you. Your work hasn't finished yet. So I wanted to start, if I may, just referencing back to Leon, Frédéric, and I'd like to, I found it when we were earlier looking through the slides and seeing the images of Rue de Garibaldi, you know, sort of 100 years ago, and then what happened to it since and how effectively you're going back. And I want to understand that in going back and dealing with the trees and that, what were the challenges that you and the authorities faced in delivering, you know, what we've seen there?
L'essentiel, c'était de parvenir à changer les mentalités, parce qu'il y avait énormément de méconnaissances et d'idées reçues.
Changing mentalities was a big challenge. because people had strong ideas that were hard to change.
Le discours sur l'arbre dans la ville est un discours totalement négatif. Ça coûte cher, ça déforme les trottoirs, c'est dangereux, il faut ramasser les feuilles. Le discours portait uniquement sur les aspects négatifs et ne voyait absolument pas les aspects positifs.
Only the negative aspects of trees were considered. It was dirty, it has leaves, it destroys the pavement, you name it. Only negative aspects were taken into account.
Et donc il a fallu travailler pour réapprendre et montrer tous les aspects positifs liés à la présence de la nature en ville.
So we had to show really and demonstrate the positive aspects nature could bring to the cities.
L'autre idée reçue, c'est qu'un projet avec des arbres et de la nature, ça coûte plus cher.
Another idea that was strongly in the minds was that it would be very, very expensive.
Et en fait, on s'aperçoit, on a fait des études sur le coût global de ce type de projet qui intègre la gestion de l'eau, la nature, et on s'aperçoit que sur 60 ans, en matière d'analyse du coût global, ces projets sont moins chers que des projets purement routiers.
These projects were, surveys showed that in 60 years' time, these projects are even cheaper than other types of old car projects.
But there must have been great political will.
La volonté politique était importante.
Oui, en fait, la volonté politique, elle était liée à cette mobilisation des habitants, qui était un contre-pouvoir très fort. Les gens s'enchaînaient aux arbres quand on les coupait, ils ne comprenaient absolument pas.
The political will was the reflection of the will of the people. That was very, very strong. There were people who attached themselves to trees because they didn't want them to be cut.
Je l'ai dit tout à l'heure, ce n'est pas un choix politique, ça a été une demande sociale qui a été pratiquement, qui s'est imposée d'elle-même.
It was a social demand more than a political will to begin with.
Et quand on a fait le premier projet comme ça, les gens ont dit, c'est ça qu'on veut, c'est ça qu'on demande depuis 20 ans.
And when the first project was set up, people said, that's what we want. That's what we've been asking for 20 years.
Et après, tous les décideurs politiques ont dit, on va faire cette politique.
Decision makers then decided, okay, we will go on, deploying it elsewhere.
I don't think we've quite got to the stage yet, Eamon, where we've got people chaining themselves to trees yet in Manchester. But I mean, obviously you paid.
You'll find people doing exactly that, where there's quite an aggressive strategy to deal with aging and potentially dangerous street trees. And I think that just emphasises the need for us to develop in individual localities appropriate solutions to some of these challenges where you know, many of us have forest trees that were planted 100, 120, 150 years ago, reaching the end of their natural life. And we do need a systematic way of not losing the quality of environment those trees help to create. So as well as planting new trees, there is a real need for us to manage the existing tree stock and make sure that we're replenishing and replacing it.
No, I mean, clearly from your discussion, you know, your presentation, that there's a great political will to make it happen. But I mean, you know, as at the moment, as we are affording it, is that an issue?
Well, let's be clear. I mean, individual local authorities within GM will be spending a significant amount of money on maintaining their streetscape. That will go on. City of Trees is being funded through volunteer work. It's been funded through the partners that I mentioned earlier on. It's been funded through bringing together grant and other support systems. So there is no significant mainstream public money going into that. I think there will be a question mark for us as we move forward and think about how we mitigate things like air quality and how we deal with some of those problems moving forward. What level of public expenditure is legitimate to apply to that? That's a debate that needs to be had in the future.
I'd like to come back to you, Frederic, if I may. I'm quite interested to understand from you, having gone through that experience on the Rue de Garibaldi, what sort of lessons you've learned from that and how you're now taking that forward to other areas of the city in
Quelles
Lyon.
sont les leçons tirées du passé et comment vous voyez les choses à l'avenir?
Ce qu'il faut, c'est déjà ne pas perdre la mémoire de notre histoire.
do not forget history. Have it in mind.
Parce que on avait déjà ces arguments, on avait déjà la technique et on a perdu tout ça.
We had the arguments, we had the technique, and we lost it at one point.
Donc il faut pouvoir inscrire à nouveau cet objectif dans une stratégie à long terme.
These objectives must be clearly put in a long-term strategy.
Et cette stratégie, elle doit être partagée par les habitants. Et la charte de l'arbre, c'est un élément justement qui permet de rassembler les gens autour justement d'un débat sur dans quelle ville on veut vivre finalement.
This strategy should be shared by the inhabitants, and this is done through the charter I mentioned earlier on, the charter on the tree, signed by 100 players, associations, etc., and that will help us go forward.
And you now have that strategy to roll out across the city?
Cette stratégie s'étend dans toute la ville maintenant?
Dans les 59 communes de l'agglomération.
In the 59 municipalities of the conurbation.
Right, good. I'd like to bring you all in now into this discussion, if I may. And if you just any questions, maybe on the issue of delivery, you know, can we really, having seen what, you know, the ambition of Lyon, can we really bring that to the Greater Manchester? Are there questions for the panel? Lindsay.
Hi. Is it the issue of delivery, or is it the issue of long-term management and maintenance of these trees that is the issue in Manchester, or potentially the issue in Manchester? I think capital outlay to plant the trees in the first place is perhaps not the thing to deal with, but there seem to be a lot of people, particularly the highways teams, don't like you to plant trees because they have a long-term role in maintaining them. So how do we deal with that problem? Clearly in Lyon that's been dealt with in a certain way, but can it be done in Manchester?
Who would like to take that? Eamon or?
Well, I mean, if I can start, I think we need to learn some lessons, because many of the problems that my highway engineers would always remind me that, you know, trees are bad things. Trees should be eliminated because they just uproot roads and cause underground havoc. But that's because we've planted the wrong kind of trees. If we plant large forest trees in an urban setting, then they may well cause that. But there are other forms of planting, more managed planting. And of course, this has got to be part of, I mean, the Poynton solution. That wasn't just about greening. It was also about reducing the carbon footprint. It was about intervening in a way that created a higher quality public realm and a more functional, although if you drive through Poynton, you might query just how functional that junction is from time to time. The objective was broader than that. So I think we have to recognise there's a balance between a perfectly maintenance-free environment, which is probably an environment none of us would want to live in, and one where we have to cater in and factor in that there needs to make appropriate provision for that maintenance as we go forward.
And I mean, I think that, Lindsay, as well, I mean, you and your practice were very instrumental and contributory to the residential design guide, and increasingly, you know, it's being enshrined in documents such as that. And so I think we have to be encouraged that, you know, we have a real momentum going forward. I think you were going to come in there, were you?
I was just going to pick up on the idea of trying to plant trees in the current landscapes when what we actually need is a completely different view of the landscape. So the order, the position, the arrangement, the structure, the composition of the street needs to be very different to what it is now, because we want to offer up these attractive, active lifestyles, and the only way to do that is the reallocation of space. And the only way we can reallocate space within the fixes we've got in terms of building line to building line within our city spaces is actually to offer a different lifestyle. We need to, at the moment, the majority of people, or a significant portion of the people in Manchester, the car is at the centre of how they regulate their lives. And if it's perceived that you're simply adding in another complication to how motorists travel around the city, I don't think that's the way we're going to engage in a meaningful conversation to sketch out and agree what this alternative lifestyle needs to be. I think what we need to say is, here's a pilot scheme, or here's a vision, a deliverable vision for a part of the city that is exemplary, is world-class in terms of its urban landscape and its urban infrastructure, and allow people to then see, because I think it's very difficult for people to visualize the gap between where we are now and where we need to get to and where we want to be. And I think it's been interesting listening to Leon that the streets that they've got in prospect now and are in delivery now was first initiated in the early 1990s. So that's quite some time ago to get to the stage and confidence that they're now at.
But if you think, I mean, if you take it that the streets, you know, are there, they're owned by the people. I mean, how do we take, you know, if what you're showing here and what we're seeing in Lyon contributes to a better, healthy life and improves transport movements and so on. I mean, how do we then get that message over to the people who ultimately own these streets? Eamon, do you have a thought on that? Is it an issue of communication?
Well, there's an issue of communication. There's also an issue of a rational debate about functionality, because streets exist to provide purposes. They are a public realm, but they are also thoroughfares. And there will always be issues of contention and balance. So the vision that you saw, the suggestion, the conceptualisation of Great Ancoat Street, fine. You will notice it reduced from 4 lanes to 2 lanes available to through traffic. What's the impact of that? How does that then impact on congestion elsewhere in the conurbation core? And what's the price that's worth paying in terms of those things? We've got to take that into account as well as greening, but I think it's very legitimate for us to say that, as City of Trees is showing, there is a real and legitimate aspiration for us to green our city, and that's something that we just have to take into account in thinking about not only designing new places, but how we improve and sustain older parts of the infrastructure as well.
With the public consultations with the City of Trees programme?
I think there are ongoing consultations on specific projects, and certainly communities are consulted about tree planting in particular locations. That is happening on a recurring basis, yeah.
Let me offer it back. Questions from the floor?
Yeah, absolutely.
Has there been any attempt to capture the value of either trees, you know, streets with trees, such as things like rateable value or property values, or indeed savings of health expenditure if they are indeed healthier cities? Is that a way to encourage further progress in this area?
Who'd like to pick that up? Keeps on coming back to you, Eamon, I'm afraid.
Well, in the presentation I gave you some statistics, some evidence that's been produced by research. I have to say that was research that was given to me by City of Trees, and therefore they were only using research that was saying it was a good thing. And I think I'd have a degree of healthy scepticism about the impact on appetite for paying higher retail prices. But there is, I think, significant evidence starting to emerge from elsewhere about the beneficial impact on health and well-being of good quality environment. And that's something that I think we really need to test and learn more about. Because if you like, going back to my original point, the thing that really attracts me about a radical approach to improving public realm is the belief, and it might be a belief that needs greater evidencing, that that's an important part of how we can actually improve people's approach to life and to helping them promote better well-being.
But I mean, I think it would be a really, it'd be a great piece of work. I'm not quite sure who would undertake that work, but to be able to demonstrate that, you know, that sort of investment creates value, increases dwell time, and presumably, I think you were alluding to, in the case of, was it Poynton, that then there's a less demand on the health service. I mean, if we could actually get hold of tangible information like that, that'd be very powerful, wouldn't it?
I think there's an emerging, increasingly credible body of evidence to support those arguments. And I think if you look at the World Health Organization and their health economic active travel heat assessment tools that they've developed, and I also made reference to some of the studies that have come out from Transport for London, I think there is a body of evidence there that supports capital investment in wholly imagined new streetscapes in cities and the economic impact that they have in terms of health and the economic uplift, commercial uplift in the places where that investment takes place.
Yes.
Just to say that the NHS Healthy New Towns programme, which is underway, and I've got 10 demonstrator sites across the UK. Currently looking to develop about 70,000 new dwellings to support those towns. We'll have a research programme attached to that, which will give that empirical evidence as things begin to be developed out.
And how do you then distribute that knowledge?
So, sorry, Justin House from IBI Group. The intention is that that becomes a piece of research evidence that becomes publicly available in the fullness of time once schemes have begun to be developed out.
Okay, good, good. Well, look, final question to Frederic. What's been the public response to what you've been able to achieve in Lyon?
Quelle a été la réaction du public?
La réaction du public, ça a été de nous dire c'est ce qu'on attendait depuis longtemps et ça a toujours été des encouragements. Et c'est ça qui a véritablement permis de développer cette politique. On le disait tout à l'heure, c'est intéressant de faire des expérimentations, des petits projets. Et ces petits projets, c'est des showrooms, c'est des démonstrateurs. Et la réaction des habitants, justement, a permis de faire en sorte que ces quelques expérimentations deviennent une généralisation.
So, as I said earlier on, public has continually been saying, that's what we've wanted for a very long time. And the idea to experiment to have small-scale projects that people can see, experiment by themselves, is just a very good thing. And the reaction of the public has always been that of encouragements.
Well, look, thank you it's been wonderful to see what Lyon is achieving and really something to aspire to. And I think really just a demonstration in many ways how important it is that we share our knowledge with our European partners. Stephen, thank you for showing the vision. And Eamon, I'm convinced that we're now beginning to lay down the foundations to really start to deliver some really meaningful quality in the public realm. So if you'd like to join me in thanking Stephen, Eamon, Frederic, and particularly Valerie for the great translation. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you.